All right, let's go ahead and get started on the app that we're going to be building. And this is going to give you a nice foundation into Apple Watch programming. And by more than making just a little demo like we just did, by building a fully fledged app here, I think you'll get a good appreciation of what it takes to make an Apple Watch app. So what we're going to be building is an app called the Time Tracker. And in essence, what we're going to be covering here is a little Apple Watch app where if you're trying to track how long you've been working throughout the day, you can do that very simply with one tap. The whole idea with Apple Watch apps is that they shouldn't be big, complicated interfaces with lots of things going on. It's stuff that users want to use within a couple of seconds, right? If they're going to be using it any longer than that, they just go ahead and pull out their phone and do what they need to do, but we want to make things very simple in our app. So essentially it looks like this. When someone first comes into the app, it tells them how long they've worked for the day. So maybe today they've worked 3 hours and 4 minutes. And so if they hit the clock in button, it's then going to go to a screen that shows what their total length is of today, but then it's going to start counting what their current clock in time is and then have a nice clock out button. And that's it. If someone hits the clock out button, it comes back and shows whatever the total length of today is. This is all we want the user to be able to see, and there's just one button that they can press in between there, right? Like we want to keep things very simple. Now, to go a little bit more detailed and show off some of the functionality of the Apple Watch, we're going to make it so that if someone does a hard press, which something really cool about the Apple Watch is that it can detect how hard someone's interacting with the screen. If they do a hard press, we're going to reveal two buttons, one that says go to the history and another one that says reset all. So you can guess with the reset all, we're just deleting everything inside of the app. But then the history button, this is going to show a table view, and it'll be pretty fun to learn how table views work in the Apple Watch world, where they can scroll through and see all the different time chunks that they've worked for, and they can tap in on any one of those, and it's going to say, hey, this is when you clocked in, and this is when you clocked out. We're just going to show a custom time there, okay? So this is the beginning of what it is that we're trying to move towards. Again, I always think it's important that if you're going to be building an app that you have a drawn out process of where it is that you're going to. So that's why we have this all detailed out here. But with this in place, let's go ahead and make an app and start moving towards this. So I'm going to fire up Xcode here, and I'm going to create a new Xcode project. Again, we want watchOS iOS app with WatchKit app. Okay, I'm going to call this one the Time Tracker. Okay, and if you want to get really fancy, you could call it like the Time Tracker 2000 if you wanted to, or something like that. But I don't think we need to go crazy like that, so we'll just call it Time Tracker. Next, leave all these kind of default. Again, we don't need the notification or the complications, so we'll go ahead and uncheck that. But let's go ahead and throw this on the desktop. Now, like we had done before, we're going to go over to our build settings here, and we're going to search for embedded. And here we have not embedded, just embed. Always embed Swift standard libraries. Let's go ahead and change this to a yes. Okay, go to our product, do a clean build folder. Now that we have that in place, let's go ahead and make sure that everything's working here. So I'm going to go ahead and just change this to be our Apple Watch app, and I'm going to have this be the 8 Plus. Let's go ahead and hit that run button so we can make sure that our simulators are all working and we can get going from there. So the big thing that I want to tackle first is that we'll be able to get these different displays showing out here. If you really think about it, there's 3 different interface controllers in our app. There's one here. This is essentially one right here that's going to show the today time, this little today in a shorter bit of space, and then a clock in and a clock out. We have an interface controller that shows all the different time periods in a table view, and then we have another interface controller that just shows a couple of labels mentioning this is when you clocked in and this is when you clocked out. Okay, so with all of these, we only have to make 3 in total. And let's go ahead and check on our simulator. Yep, look at that. It opened up, no problem there, so that's good to go. Next, now let's go ahead and actually start working through designing each of these. So let's start first with the main screen. Again, what we're going to have inside of here is our clock in, clock out button on the bottom. We're going to have a little message at the top that displays this is the today hours, depending. Some cases it will be there, some cases it will not. And then another label here that's going to show the current time. So let's start first with the button, which I really think is kind of the big key critical point of this screen. So I'm just going to grab a button here, drag it out. And now, so what you'll notice when you put something inside of an interface controller is the layout is very simple. There's no sort of auto layout that you can do, and there's, not constraints and stuff, because things in the Apple Watch world just need to be very straightforward. You can only have big interface items here, because if you have anything, too detailed, it's really not going to work on the Apple Watch app. And so what we're going to do with this button, if you go ahead and click on some of its properties here, the alignment, this is the big thing that we want to work with. You also want to deal with size here, but you can say where it is you want this thing to be aligned horizontally. So we just want that to be in the center, even though this button's taking up the full space. We do want that centered. And then for as far as the vertical alignment, for us, we want it to be on the bottom, right? So we've got this nice button near the bottom of the screen, right? That kind of matches with what it is that we're trying to do. Now, something that you could do with this button is right now we have the width of this saying relative to container, and it's saying, this is, a 1, meaning it fills up the whole space. If we do like a 0.8, for example, now it's, just 80% of the width there. You could change that if you want to. I'm going to keep this as 1 because I want this to be a nice big button that the user doesn't have to try hard to hit, like it's just ready and available to be tapped. I think that's a good space there. Okay, now let's go ahead and change the beginning text on this. We can have it say something like clock-in. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. Next, one more thing is that I think visually when we run this, I'll go ahead and let you see this. I mean, you can already kind of tell here from the storyboard, but this button is very close to the bottom. And just visually, it looks a little bit weird to have this button go all the way to the edge there and to have no spacing whatsoever. Since our simulator's popping up there, I mean, you can't exactly tell unless you were on an actual watch, but it looks a little bit weird having this close. So we're going to add a little bit of styling here. I'm going to look for our separator. There it is. And I'm going to put a little separator. Oh, I've got to edit this to go down to the bottom, vertical bottom. There we go. To have some spacing in between there. Now, I don't want to keep this white like it is right now because that's going to make it so that, there's a random white line down there. So in fact, what we're going to do with this is we're going to change its color. We want this to be, not the color here. Let's see, hidden. No, alpha. There we go. That's what I wanted to set. There we go. So now it's invisible, but you can see there's a little bit of space there so that the button's right now at the bottom. You can totally change your interface how you want, but to me, that's a nice little hack to make the button just right, not right next to the bottom. Next, let's add this label that's going to be in the middle that shows, today, how long they worked, and for the time, whatnot. So let's go ahead and grab a label and bring it out here. Let's see, there we go. There's a nice label. So I'm going to try and bring this in somewhat to the center, but again, we're going to have to change alignment here. So I want this to be centered horizontally, then vertically I also want this to be centered. Now let's check the text that we want to have showing up there. It's going to say something like today and then list out, the hours, minutes, seconds, whatever that's going to be. And so we want to select this label, and unfortunately you can't make multiple lines here, but if we go, for example, into our interface controller and I just say something like today and go to a new line, oops, don't do any autocomplete, in like 3 hours, 44 minutes, something like that. If I cut this and come back and then I go to my label and paste this in, then I can get 2 lines to show up there. Now with this, whenever you put this in, you've got to go down and specify that you want more than 1 line there to get that to show up like that. But you can see the text here is much smaller than we'd like it to be. Like we'd like it to fill up most of the screen there. And so what we're going to do with this is go over here and change this from, rather than just being the body text style, to say system. And we're just going to pump this up until we think it's big enough. And I think maybe about here is good. The thing that you can really kind of do with this is that you can make it quite big. And if you ever have numbers that are going to exceed and like go too big, you get like the little ellipses there. You can do this minimum scale and actually bring this down and say, if the text ends up being too big, we can actually shrink things down. So even though things right now look way too big, if we go ahead and give this a run, you'll see that it will shrink this text properly to make sure that everything fits inside of there. So let's go ahead and just give that the test, make sure that is the case. And here it comes. Look at that. You can see it does the appropriate shrinking there. And you can see, look, there's that nice spacing that we had before. All right, so that's looking pretty good there. The last thing that we need to add is just that little label up at the top that sometimes will appear, sometimes will not, depending on the situation. One more thing that we want to do with this is we want to make sure that the alignment on this is centered, because you can notice how it says like today and then goes down. I'd like to have everything sort of centered in the middle. You could keep this like that if you'd want, but I think it looks a little bit better centered. Okay, so we'll go ahead and change that bit, but we do need to add a label to the top. So let's go ahead and grab a label. I'm going to bring it up. It looks good. Let's see alignment. Want it to be to the top. Let's have this. This one I think we do want to actually have to the left. I guess we also could have that centered. It's really up to you about how you want to have that one handled. But I think maybe the left will be best, because this is going to hold something like today, 3 hours, 44 minutes, something like that. Okay. So there you have it. We have the very first interface controller all finished up here. Time to move on to our next one, which is going to be, if someone wants to do the hard press, that they can get to this table view or to these labels here. Now, the whole part about getting to these hard presses, let's go ahead and deal with that. We can add that to this current interface controller. If we go ahead and select from our options here, we want to bring out a menu. So I'm just going to drag and drop this. You can put it anywhere on top of this interface controller. So once you select this, you can see in the menu you've got these little menu items, and when you have the menu it asks how many do you want. You can have up to 4. No, I was going to say up to 4. It's letting me do more. I was under the assumption you could only have 4, but in our situation we only need 2. We just need the one for history and one to say reset all. So we're going to take the first one here, and let's change this title to say history. Okay, as far as the image on this one goes, we want it to, give some sort of vibe that, you're looking at, information. So I think the info one here is going to be a good one. This next one, reset all, we need to give the idea that we're deleting stuff. So I think the trash is going to be a good little image there. So to test how this works, let's go ahead and run this. I'm going to show you on the simulator how you can simulate doing a hard press. So what you're going to do here is under the simulator, under hardware, you can go to touch presser and go from shallow press, which is just a normal tap, and then deep press. And the little hotkey here is Command Shift 1 and 2, 2 being the deep, 1 being the shallow. So something that's kind of funny is the hotkey to start and stop my recording software is also Command Shift 2, so I actually can't do the hotkey here, or else I cut out the recording on you guys. So I'm just going to manually change this to deep press, and you'll see now if I tap here, whoa, all of a sudden this cool menu shows up and I have history and reset all. And if you do the hard press again, you can go in and out of this. Now if you ever want to tap on one of these things like history or reset all, you can do that, but you have to go ahead and switch back to the touch pressure of 1, and then you can hit on history or reset all, whatever it is that you want. Okay, so you can see they make it very easy for us to test adding more things there. I'm actually very interested to see what happens if we put more than 4 items inside of there. I just want to see what happens. I've never tried this before, but I figure this could be a fun little thing to experiment with. So I'm going to go to touch presser. I'll do 2. Okay, app opens up. I hit that thing, and I'm not seeing anything else. I wonder why that's not showing anything. And I'm trying to do like a scroll or something through there, and I didn't get anything. Maybe that's because I had to put some sort of style on some of these. I'll give them a custom name here. Because, yeah, I'm just real curious as to what that would look like. Let's do images for all these. Okay, so I'm going to delete some of these to go back to just the ones where we actually have information, but let's try this out. To me, this is in when you're trying to learn how stuff works, it's these little moments when you go out and test things just to see what would happen. This is where the real learning takes place. So I think it's always good to be curious. And look at that. Okay, so we've got a couple of things here. I'm going to switch back to a soft touch to hopefully simulate being able to scroll somehow through here. And I'm getting nothing. So I think my instinct was right that you can only have 4 items there. Again, we only need the 2, but it's interesting that it lets you put up more than 4, but although more than 4 wouldn't work. Anyways, we're getting way off of where we need to be, and that's that we need 2 more interface controllers, one to hold a table here. This one's going to be really straightforward, so we're just going to scroll up. We want normal old interface controller. Then inside of this, we want to provide a table. And so if we just scroll down, there's a table that we can add in here. And really, that's all it takes is adding this in here. Now it's going to, later we're going to have to come back and add a label to make this all work and everything. But just for the time being, just have this showing up here. And then the next interface controller that we need is one that's going to show the clock in and clock out time. So grab another interface controller. And in this one, again, we want to have a label, information, label, information. So we'll go ahead and grab some labels out here. Just drag and drop. In fact, I'm just going to put 4 out there in a row. And these are all connected and up to the left by default. So this is perfect. We just need to change what's in here. We'll just say clock in, colon. Then we'll put some sort of time in here like August 5th, 4:32 p.m., something like that. Clock out. And we'll put something like August 5th, 4:44 p.m., something like that. Okay, so with these in place, for both of these labels, I'm going to select both of these. Hold down your command key to select multiple things. I just want to bump up the size on this, and in fact, we don't have to go real custom here. We could just, let's try some different sizes. The captions make it smaller. We don't want that. Let's see, headline. Headline could be pretty good. Larger title. Ooh, that's maybe too big there. Let's go with headline. I think that's going to show appropriate. So I just want to specify that like these are the real important things to see. Yes, the user needs to know that like this is the clock in and the clock out. But I want to have some sort of boldness there. And in fact, I don't think that's enough for me. So I'm actually going to bump this up a little bit bigger. Let's do title 1, 2, 3. Let's do title 2, and we'll go ahead and set some minimum scale on here in case it needs to shrink itself. Then it can go ahead and appropriately do that if needed to. Okay, so we've got that all set up there. That looks pretty good. Visually, everything is ready to go in our app. It's now just a matter of plugging everything in, making it all work, all that good stuff. So we'll go ahead and stop here, but in the next one, we'll talk about how to start actually coding this time tracker.